We'll be taking a deep dive into the neglect of the educational sector, especially as it impacts on out-of-school children in Nigeria. Recently, the United Nations Children Fund estimated the total number of out-of-school children in Nigeria to be 20.2 million, saying 1 in 3 children in the country is out of school. According to the agency, the figure of 10.2 million are at the primary level, while 10 million at the junior secondary level. UNICEF added that 1 in every 5 out-of-school children in the world is in Nigeria, with over 60% in the north. Despite the staggering number, states have failed to access UBEC funds meant to develop the basic education subsector. You recall yesterday in our reports that over 69 billion, if you like 70 billion in estimates, have been left to lie fallow in the accounts of the universal basic education, because basically states are willing to provide matching funds as prescribed by the enabling laws to enable them access this fund. Just over 7 states, or about 7 states, have been able to raise about 10.2 billion thereabouts to access another 50% counterpart funding from the fund in the last few years. The worrisome development described in many quarters as a time bomb. And this morning on the show, we will be looking at out-of-school children, especially funding at the primary school or basic elementary school level. And with us in the studio, via Zoom from Maiduguri, we have Barrister Zanna Mustafa. Barrister Mustafa is a lawyer, an educationist, and a philanthropist. Thank you very much, Barrister, for joining us this morning. And let me also inform our viewers that we are sorting our technicalities out to also have Professor Obu Solomon join us. He's a public affairs analyst and a lecturer with the University of Abuja. Once again, Barrister, good morning. I would like to get your thoughts. In the last couple of weeks, we have been inundated with very troubling statistics as far as our educational sector is concerned. First, it was the UNICEF reports that suggested that we have now clocked over 20.2 million out-of-school children, ranging from junior secondary school down to primary school, and about 60% of these figures they identified, coming from the north. And it just appears that all we do is to wait for these statistics to balloon, and whenever they come up in form of a report, we basically just raise eyebrow, discuss them, and go back to sleep. Sometimes in 2010, the figures was around 10 million, and at that time, we were all shouting that this is alarming, and we needed to do something to curtail it. But in the last decade, we just basically went to sleep and woke up, and the figures have tripled. And now we are dealing with over 20 million out of school. What is the direct implication of allowing these statistics to continue to grow?
Well, thank you for joining you. But I just want you to understand that I cannot just sit here and give an armchair analysis of the numbers of children out of school. Because if we are to look at Maiduguri, for example, out of the state, virtually it has been infected with these children coming out virtually every day from the bush, from the insurgents. So if there is no way one can sit down and give pictures of the numbers, whether it is a staggering or whichever. But what I know is that it is something that the government cannot handle. No matter how honestly one may wish to lay content, that the government is doing much on building schools and helping out to educate these children. There is no way this can be done, because there is need on our own part to see that we are all our hands has to be on deck to see that we have to take these children off the street. If you just go and watch the street in Maiduguri, you can see ridiculous number of children roaming the street, some impeding for livelihood, And secondly, it is sort of a multifaceted. You can see children coming out, but yet they have not had virtually everything for that decade because they have not had either the moral or the education. So for you to give out the safe space for them to even settle and then go to school is not even there. So it is not about their numbers. It is how do you provide the safe space for the students to come in so that they can also start education. So these are some of the problems we've been having. It is not about funding. Let's just see how do we contain it. You know, the government has to go on an emergency to see that it caters for this sort of children. So this is what I
Okay,
say for
Barrister, we understand the case of Maiduguri as an isolated case, if you like, given the fight with insurgency in over a decade. But what do we say, you know, when you extend your lenses to other places that are not exactly in the same situation as Maiduguri? We understand safe space is an issue there, but there are other places that are relatively, over 50 or 70% of the states are relatively within, peaceful. So what happens? It's my own one part of the question for me. What are we doing? Does it appear that apart from being alarmed, whenever these statistics come out, are we doing anything at all to arrest this number or to arrest the situation as the case may be?
Well, obviously, if you look at the trend in the Northeast, well, there is a sheer resistance to education, more especially of the girl child. But yet, if you look at what is on ground, you know, government cannot contain this thing because there are children for this decade-long insurgency in the Northeast. I don't want to give a larger listen because I'm not there. I'm only at the Northeast. So I know places like Yobe, Borno, and even part of Gombe are not having such much needed education for the children. So that's why you cannot just sit and say, well, things are okay, or one can be alarmed. I'm not somebody who is raged, but what I'm just saying is that government effort is not enough for them to have education at this level or try to contain all these children or take them off the street.
Okay, so government effort is not enough. You've emphasized that, which of course we can relate to that. But what can we do as individuals to actually make sure that we make education, you know, very lucrative, very eye-catching for these children? I understand that they've been displaced, they've gone through a lot, and then getting back to school seems to be sort of a problem. So what can we do if that is the case?
Well, the government has to take such an emergency measures to see that at least it has to entice people so that it can contain some of these children. Like, there are various efforts being made by government too, but yet the government's effort is not enough. So we have to look at various options for us to see that we can contain it. Like, there are a lot of things. The development partners are all there. There is a fund that is meant for this thing, but it cannot be assessed because the process for obtaining such grants are cumbersome. You have to give counterpart funding. You have to do all these sort of things are making the assessments of such funds very difficult. And yet, the involvement of the non-state actors are not also forthcoming for now because virtually what they do is that they give out bags, school bags, books, and these are some things that you cannot just have to. It's not about the food. How about the feeding? You have to feed these children. Like, the children don't eat any tangible meal for me. And you know, the economic system is not allowing these things to go. And you have to put the home and the school in one page for them to go to school. So such efforts are not there. How do they struggle to get meals on the table first before going to school? When a child doesn't eat a tangible meal for days, how will he go to school? These are efforts that, you know, I'm just saying virtually it's a very difficult task that one could continue for now.
All right. Barrister, I would like us to, as much as possible, try to break down these conversations and situate these problems really where they are. when you say that the process of assessing funds to support this sector is cumbersome, is it more cumbersome than the loans that these state governments go to borrow that also require documentations? Because basically what the law says is provide matching funds, which is supposed to be a proof of commitment on your part that you want to develop this sector, and whatever you provide, we will match it 50%. If you will put down 10 billion to arrest a problem like this in the state, and you will get another free 10 billion from a fund that is readily available, what sort of documentation will be too much for you in an entire 8-year space that you're unable to fulfill to access this fund? So my question really is it a function of a cumbersome process, or state governments legitimately uninterested about developing this sector?
Well, I'm not keeping any fault for any government, and no matter how honest they are. You know, what I'm just saying in essence is that why government? Why don't we go direct to non-state actors who are providing this education? So these are questions. You know, the intentions of government, no matter how honest they are, they cannot have such sincerity of purpose in giving such education. That is why. But obviously what I'm saying is that, you know, you have to ease the process. How do you ease the process when you want to give education? You are giving us funds. Why matching fund? You know, in a process like that, we have been running this foundation for over 15 years. It even preceded the insurgency itself. When it comes, we involve virtually everybody. Everybody, no matter how distant, even the element, Boko Haram element, who have their own children in this foundation. So what we have is we are providing an inclusive institution where we play. We play it in such a way that everybody gets his education. Okay. But no matter if you want to put on government at first, you know, the system, why the school system is failing and nobody is saying anything.
Okay, Barrister, I just want our viewers, I'm sure, will want a bit of clarity. You are a barrister at law, and you understand the enabling laws setting up, for instance, the Universal Basic Education, which stipulates in very clear terms how access to these fundings will be done. And as we speak, that law has not changed. And so basically that funds cannot go out except the condition precedents are met. So are you suggesting that we should tamper with those laws and amend them such that the funds should look for non-state actors? If that is the case, are you also suggesting that because the governments have proved to be inefficient, that they should abdicate that responsibility of it? Because they have done that largely in urban centers, in other places. Parents would rather prefer private schools than take their wards to public schools. And so a large fiber of that education at that level is being provided by people like you and those who play in the private sector. Are we not providing a fatter grant for the government to hands off what is supposed to be a basic responsibility at that level?
Well, what I just want to tell you is that there is no sincerity of purpose on the part of the government in giving out such sincere education at the primary or secondary level. That's human. But the law is perfect. If you look at the law, the system, how it is, this indicator of funding is been put in place. These are some commitment. You need such commitment to be there. But you know, if you are just going to talk, like when we started Future Project, for example, virtually my own biological children all went to that school. It is an open school, but all of them went to such school just to give out education because there is a natural purpose. But do you have any state governor or any commissioner that sends his own son to a public school? So that is what if you don't have such sincerity, there is no way you can give out. When you take out your own children outside and then you allow children to do it, in as much as you didn't consider your own children as worthy for that offense or any other children in the street, there is no way you can give that sincerity of purpose. So the laws, no matter how good they are, they cannot function well as it is in the country.
Okay, Barrister.
That is all what I said.
Barrister, we were talking about the funding now, which of course he asked the question, you know, assessing this funding, you know, there are laws stipulated that these fundings have to be disbursed to the right sector. And of course, we're talking about education now. Now, if this money is not used the way they are supposed to be used in this sector, what should we do as an individual, as a community, or as a state government? Because clearly, if we keep accessing fundings from international organizations, from individuals, from philanthropists like yourself, clearly the government is going to say that it's going to give them a room to keep allocating, less percentage of the national budget to education, which of course we've seen right now from, statistics, from the percentage. If you want to look at it now, a review of the proposed budget, for 2024 for the budget is less than 7%, which is below the mark of what they've spent in the education sector, of course, 8.8% in 2023. So where are we going? Where do we go from here? How do we solve the problem using the law and also asking government to be accountable for what happens in the education sector, so we can have these children back to school and learning the way that they should actually?
Well, obviously, what I just want you to take, for example, is that don't take education out of the Nigerian system. Things are collapsing, more especially when it comes to the education sector. In as much as we don't have commitment towards putting education as the forefront. Just don't look at the budget. There are various budgets that have been put in place. But, the question is that whether such commitment to get these things done is there. We need to have commitment across board. It's not about saying we could.
Barrister, I'm afraid we are unable to get your audio. You may want to check. Okay, that's fine. Can you please kindly finish on your thought?
Yeah, what happens actually is that you don't actually do certain things when you don't have commitment at the two sides of the coin. One, you have to first look at what you do, and then the budget. How do we implement the budget? How do we keep commitments to education? It is not about this thing. We are facing a lot of challenges in giving out safe space for citizens to go in. And then it's not about the funding alone. Funding can also be this, no matter when we don't even have government funds as we do have here. But yet, our commitments to education by our forefathers has been such a spark that we can commit it. But the commitments is just what is lacking. If we can get committed government, committed people who can have such this thing, we can fund the education. And that is, I don't want to be sort of passive in telling people that cannot do this thing. The Nigerian government, we have better people who can do things the way they are. So it is just obvious that let's just look at things where it is, and then we should also have our minds close to funding, how it is done, the laws, how it is being committed. So these are some of the things we have to do.
All right, Barrister, I'd like to ask again, as a major stakeholder in this sector, with your interactions with government officials, does it even appear that they understand the magnitude of this problem, or what the consequence of having these large numbers out of school means to their economic development? That's on the one hand. And what can we do with this nearly lost generation, if you ask, of people who are growing every day without any life skills, to sustain them through adulthood? What can we do, at least to equip them with some life skills, to be able to take care of their needs and wants as they continue to grow?
Well, the government has more aids than any other. They have various means of knowing what is actually on the ground. They have this means. But, the commitment is what we are. So what we need to do is that we have to train these children for the future to be good. If we didn't train them, it is a time bomb that is about to happen. And these are some of the things that government has to understand. It is not about the political scenario that is just too much on this thing, that too much things on demand from the government and all this thing. You know, government cannot handle such magnitudes. We need to come out, commit our government so that they can also diversify it in such a way that you don't have to give only education. You have to give skills acquisition where they have to get livelihood for them to get things done. So this is what we are liking. We need to have such commitment.
Okay, let's see. I'd like to ask this question. We're running out of time, but let me just put this question out there. With the increase in, the budgetary allocation for education this year, do you think that, this will really do anything so much about picking those children out on the street to schools, especially in the northern part of the country?
Well, it is not about the budget itself or the money that is being committed. How many other educational things have been done? The feeding program, for example, has it succeeded? How does it succeed? How, at where? These are some of the things we have to do. It's not about the budget or the money, the quantum of money that is being spent. It is about how this implementation plan is being put in place. Is it going to be done? And what are the checks and balances when you put up such things? So these are the questions that we have to put for the government. So that the government
can you give us a sense on
how
this would work effectively? Give us a sense on how this will work effectively. When we start rolling out some of these funds, putting together. I know that you're a philanthropist, you're a stakeholder in the education sector. What do we do differently so we can get these children back to school? Give us a sense of that.
Well, the obvious question is that we have to put this education at the local level. It is not about government controlling virtually everything. If we have to commit such, we need to give all stakeholders so that they can also be at the educations are not being implemented by educators. It is being implemented by government. So how does this go? You have to give such educators the means for them to say these are the means and ways for them to do it. If you can do this thing, that is obviously how it will be done. But when you sit on a political actors, those who came in, who have not had anything, they only have the education, but they are not educators. So there is no way they can also put such things on ground. You have to call educators to have a planning program so that they can implement any other program. That is how they get things right. That's all.
Just to throw a bit more light on what Madia has said, Barrister, if the government is not doing the right thing and doesn't appear to know what the right thing is to do, and you are talking about expanding collaborations with private sector players, where do we get the lead from? Where should the handshake really begin? Is it the organized private sector approaching the government to say, hey, leave this sector for us, we can do something about it, just support us with funding? Or the government, being the one reaching out to the private sector and say, you can come collaborate with us under these terms and conditions? Where are we going to find that critical handshake, that should kickstart the serious implementation of policies that would change the current tide?
Well, we should not first forget that only government has such mandate, nobody any other. They have actually everything. They own the security network, the security agricultures, and then it is for them to say they have made they came out to make policies when they said we are going to change the education system when we come into government. So it is them who have to sit down and then look out for the ways out. It's not how would the common man do? This is what we are saying. It is the government who has such mandates and it can expand such so that everybody should be getting out of their governance.
You can see that the education sector is one of the sectors that it's really hard to get accountability, and it's really hard reporting some of these things if we don't have people, at the top of affairs coming to explain some of these things to us, engaging the government, engaging the minister, even at the lower level, not just the minister, but, a school headmistress or a school headmaster coming to tell us in the public sector that this is how these funds have been disbursed, this is how the funds were utilized. It's really, really hard. Accountability is really a problem. Now, is there something wrong with the law? Is there something wrong with the implementation? Because a lot of people want to understand, is it the law that guides the disbursement of the fund or accessing the fund that is so rigid that it cannot be repealed, it cannot be, looked into? What is the problem really?
Well, the problem is about the governance, the polity itself. There is a change of government. When this government in the same party, when they change, they cannot implement something that has been started by the previous government. So it is the consistency in government that is lacking. And then the commitment towards putting up a very serene atmosphere is what is lacking. It's not about the system, the laws. These things are perfect. But the type of teaching is the sincerity of purpose, of how things are done. Like actually, when governments put on a policy, the last thing is this policy will be changed. So how do you change this policy when the government's commitment is not there? So we need to commit our government so that they can also give us a clear-cut ways to put up our education system. That's all.
All right, Barrister, before we let you go, one final question. Do you think that the federal government should, by the virtue of what appears to be an obvious failure, also take on the burden of adding the basic education, which is basically primary and junior secondary school, to its fold? Because right now, that falls squarely within the purview of state government. Do you think that if the federal government adds that burden to itself, that it will make it any better than it is right now?
Well, I'm not even saying federal government. It should be left at the local government. It is not about them. They don't have any business doing education at that thing. They only budget for what they are going to afford. But, even state government don't have such this thing. Leave it to the local levels. Let them have their own. If you have to do things, education is not something that you need. It works with the cultural norms and protocol of the people right there. They want how they want their own education. They want it. Let them see. You have to have sort of a conference for them to say, yes, this is the type of education. If you have to say, no, I want to teach you in your native language or whichever, knowledge is knowledge. So, and if you didn't train these children to have their own ways of education and how they want it and how they will implement it, this is theirs. If they fail, they are the ones that fail. But how do you make this thing that you spread it all over and then they all fail? So that's why it is not them. Let us have sort of a conference on education at the local level so that everybody should say what they want, how they want, so that it can be implemented. These are some of the questions that we need to sit down and then.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We've been talking to a lawyer, an educationist, and a philanthropist, Barrister Zanna Mustafa. I want to thank you very much for finding time to be part of our conversation this morning, and for also taking time to be part of the solution. I dare to mention that. Thank you very much for being part of our conversation this morning, and do have a great day.